The rumble of motorcycles filled the Atlanta summer air as hundreds of bikes gleamed under the midday sun. Officer Sarah Collins stood at her post, her German Shepherd Max alert at her side, scanning the sea of leather and chrome at the Freedom Riders rally. 5 years on the force together had made them a seamless team, until today. Max's first bark startled her. By the third, heads were turning. "Max, quiet," Sarah commanded, feeling the weight of stares. The disciplined K-9 officer had never disobeyed before. His bark wasn't aggressive or threatening, it was insistent, desperate, focused entirely on a gleaming Harley with custom blue detailing parked in the VIP section. The owner, a tall man with weathered skin and arms sleeved in tattoos, approached with narrowed eyes. "Don't control your dog, officer. That's a $20,000 custom paint job he's fixing to jump at." "Sorry, sir." Max heel. Sarah tugged gently on his tactical harness, but the German Shepherd resisted, a slight tremor running through his muscular frame. Sarah recognized that tremor. It wasn't fear. It was detection. Lieutenant Hayes appeared, his face tight with annoyance. "Collins, get your dog under control or get him out of here. We've got senators arriving in 10. But Sarah had seen this behavior before 2 years ago when Max found a kidnapped child locked in a car trunk, and last summer when he detected explosives at the governor's rally. Max wasn't acting out, he was alerting. Something was very wrong with that motorcycle, and Sarah felt the familiar tightening in her chest that always preceded danger. What she couldn't know was how that single motorcycle would unravel a conspiracy that would cost lives, expose corruption, and test the limits of loyalty between a woman and her dog. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Sarah Collins hadn't always planned on being a K-9 officer. After 8 years in the Army Military Police, including 2 tours in Afghanistan, she'd hoped for a quieter life. But at 36, her life was anything but quiet. The lines around her blue eyes had deepened over the last 3 years since David walked out, leaving her to raise Emma alone. Emma, now 10, had been diagnosed with autism just before her 7th birthday. David couldn't handle it, said he hadn't signed up for special needs, and disappeared to Seattle with his administrative assistant. Sarah joined the Atlanta Police Department's K-9 unit because the hours were more predictable for a single mother. Her military experience fast-tracked her application, and she'd found unexpected fulfillment in the work. Then came the undercover operation against the Santiago cartel that went sideways. 3 officers down, and Sarah left with nightmares, a commendation she didn't want, and a diagnosis of PTSD she refused to acknowledge. Max hadn't originally been her partner. The 7-year-old German Shepherd had belonged to Mike Donovan, Sarah's academy classmate and closest friend on the force. When Mike took a bullet during a warehouse raid 2 years ago, his last words to Sarah had been, "Take care of Max. He's better than most people." She'd adopted Max that week. The department had wanted to retire him, said he was too bonded to Mike to retrain. Sarah had fought for him, recognizing in those soulful brown eyes the same grief she carried. What surprised everyone was how quickly Max bonded with Emma. The first time the German Shepherd gently laid his head on Emma's lap during one of her meltdowns, then applied deep pressure against her side as she'd been taught by the therapist. Sarah had wept with gratitude. Max became not just her partner on the force, but Emma's emotional lifeline. The annual Freedom Riders rally had been routine duty for the past 4 years, a gathering of motorcycle enthusiasts, veterans, and weekend warriors that took over Atlanta's exhibition grounds each July. Lieutenant James Hayes had been Sarah's supervisor all 5 years on the force, by the book commander who'd nevertheless defended her when the higher-ups questioned her fit for duty after the Santiago operation. Other familiar faces included Jack Wilson, her FBI contact from Joint Operations, and an old friend from military days, Marcus Thompson, the rally coordinator and former Marine who'd always respected Sarah's tactical suggestions, and Thomas Wilson, the respected former FBI analyst turned private security consultant who'd written the book on detecting criminal financial networks, literally. None of them had ever seen Max act like this before. The morning had started like any other rally day. Sarah had arrived early, walking Max through the grounds before the crowds arrived, familiarizing him with the scents and sounds he'd encounter throughout the day. Emma was staying with Sarah's mother for the weekend, giving Sarah one less worry as she focused on security for what was expected to be the largest Freedom Riders rally in a decade. "Collins, you've got the main exhibition hall and VIP parking area," Hayes had said during the pre-shift briefing. "Thompson says we've got some high-profile guests, including a senator's son and some Hollywood types who ride. Keep it smooth, keep it quiet." Sarah had nodded, appreciating the relatively calm assignment. The first 4 hours had been uneventful, checking credentials, directing traffic, answering questions from out-of-town visitors. Max had been perfect, as always, his calm demeanor putting even motorcycle-wary attendees at ease. Several veterans had stopped to admire him, asking about his service history. "He's an American hero," one older man with a Vietnam veteran patch had said, kneeling to meet Max at eye level. "I can tell." Sarah had smiled, feeling the familiar pride. If only they knew how true that was. Everything changed at 1:43 p.m. The VIP section had just reopened after lunch when Max suddenly stiffened beside her. His ears perked forward, head swiveling toward a gleaming Harley that was being guided into a prime spot near the judge's stand. The motorcycle was a work of art, custom blue paint that seemed to shift colors in the light, chrome detailing that must have cost thousands, and modifications that spoke of serious investment. Max's first bark had been so unexpected that Sarah had nearly dropped her radio. Before she could command him to be quiet, he barked again, straining against his harness in a way he never had before. Sarah felt her face flush as heads turned their direction. "Max, quiet," she commanded firmly, tightening her hold on his leash. But the German Shepherd was fixated on the motorcycle, his body language screaming alert in a way Sarah had learned to trust. The motorcycle's owner dismounted slowly, removing his helmet to reveal a face weathered by sun and wind, framed by a salt and pepper beard. His eyes narrowed as he approached Sarah and Max. "Officer, you need to control your dog," he said, voice low but carrying an undercurrent of threat. "That's a one-of-a-kind custom Harley. I don't want so much as a scratch on it from your mutt." "Sir, I apologize. He's never behaved this way before." Sarah scanned the man quickly, taking in the details: expensive riding gear that looked barely worn, a watch worth at least 5 figures peeking from beneath his sleeve, and eyes that were constantly moving, assessing. Not your typical motorcycle enthusiast. Hayes appeared at her shoulder, having heard the commotion from across the exhibition hall. "What's the situation here, Collins?" "Max is alerting to this motorcycle, sir," Sarah said quietly. "I think we should check it out." Hayes glanced between the motorcycle owner and Sarah, his expression tightening. "Your dog is disrupting a high-profile event, Officer Collins. Control him or remove him from the premises." "That's an order." The motorcycle owner smiled thinly. "Listen to your boss, officer. The dog's probably just spooked by the chrome. Happens all the time." But Sarah had seen this behavior before. During the Santiago operation, Max had alerted to a shipping container that later yielded 50 kilos of heroin. In the governor's motorcade last year, he detected an explosive device planted in a garbage can along the route. Max wasn't wrong, not about this. "Sir, with respect, I'd like to run a quick check. Standard procedure when a trained K9 alerts." Hayes stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Collins, this is not the time or place. The mayor is due here in 20 minutes, and this section needs to be secure and calm. Stand down." The motorcycle owner's smile widened. "No harm done, Lieutenant. But I do have a judging appointment in 10 minutes. Hayes nodded. "Of course, Mr. Rodriguez. We won't delay you further." He turned to Sarah, his expression leaving no room for argument. "Officer Collins, relocate to the east entrance for the remainder of your shift." As Hayes led Rodriguez away, Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air-conditioned exhibition hall. Rodriguez, The name triggered a memory from briefing 6 months ago. Eduardo Rodriguez, suspected money man for the Santiago cartel, never charged due to lack of evidence. What was he doing at a charity motorcycle rally with a custom Harley? Once Hayes was out of sight, Sarah pretended to head toward the east entrance, then ducked behind a display of vintage motorcycles. She pulled out her phone, snapping several high-resolution photos of Rodriguez's bike, focusing on the VIN number, custom modifications, and license plate. "Jack, it's Sarah," she said quietly after dialing a number she knew by heart. "I need you to run a plate for me, off the record. Possible Santiago cartel connection." Jack Wilson's voice was tense. "Sarah, you know I can't just run random plates without cause." Max alerted to it, Jack. "Full alert, like Santiago." Hayes shut me down. Pause. "Send me what you've got. Give me 15 minutes. But Sarah, be careful. If this is Santiago again." I know she didn't need reminding what the cartel did to police officers who interfered with their operations. The scars on her back from the last encounter were reminder enough. While waiting for Jack's call, Sarah circled back through the service corridors, observing Rodriguez from a distance. He was chatting with Thompson now, both men appearing relaxed, but Sarah noted Thompson's eyes constantly scanning the crowd, not like a coordinator checking on the event, but like someone watching for threats. Jack called back 12 minutes later. "Sarah, you need to back off this one. That bike is registered to Felipe Martinez, one of Rodriguez's known associates. Martinez was found floating in the Chattahoochee last month. Drug enforcement has been watching Rodriguez, suspecting he's moving something big through Atlanta this weekend." Sarah's pulse quickened. The rally is perfect cover. Thousands of motorcycles coming and going, minimal inspection. Exactly. But here's the thing, someone's been tipping off Rodriguez. 2 DEA operations got blown in the planning stages. They suspect a leak somewhere in local law enforcement. The implication hung heavy between them. Hayes' dismissive attitude suddenly took on a darker meaning. "Jack, I need to know what's in that motorcycle." "Sarah, no. If Hayes is involved, this is too dangerous. Let the DEA handle it." But Sarah was already moving, making her way toward the maintenance area where the motorcycles were being prepped for judging. "Just be ready if I call. And Jack, if anything happens to me, Emma's papers are in my desk, bottom drawer. The password to my accounts is her birthday plus Mike's badge number." Sarah ended the call before Jack could protest further. She found Max watching her, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand the situation completely. "You were right, boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "You're always right." As Sarah and Max slipped unnoticed into the maintenance area, they had no idea that they were walking into a conspiracy far larger and more dangerous than a simple drug smuggling operation, one that would test every bond of loyalty, friendship, and family Sarah had ever known. The maintenance area bustled with activity mechanics making last-minute adjustments to bikes for the showcase, judges consulting clipboards, and volunteers directing traffic. Sarah kept her police jacket on but unzipped, trying to look casual as she guided Max through the controlled chaos. No one questioned their presence. A police K-9 unit was an expected sight at such a large event. Rodriguez's Harley sat in a roped-off section marked Elite Custom Class. 2 mechanics worked on nearby bikes, but Rodriguez's stood untouched, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Sarah noticed security cameras covering most of the area but spotted a blind spot behind a tool cabinet. She guided Max there, then gave him the silent command to search, a gentle tap on his shoulder followed by a sweeping hand motion. Max circled the motorcycle with purpose, his nose working furiously but silently. When he reached the custom saddlebags, he sat abruptly, his signal for a positive alert. Sarah quickly glanced around, then knelt beside the motorcycle, running her hands along the saddlebag seams. The craftsmanship was impeccable, but there was something off about the weight distribution. "Find something interesting?" The voice behind her sent ice through her veins. Sarah turned slowly, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. Hayes stood 5 feet away, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Sir, I was just directly disobeying my orders," Hayes finished. "Step away from the motorcycle, Collins." Max moved protectively to Sarah's side, not growling but alert, his eyes fixed on Hayes. Sarah noticed her supervisor's hand resting near his own weapon, an unusual posture for Hayes to take with one of his officers. "I think we should talk privately, sir." Sarah's voice was steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Hayes studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward a small office at the back of the maintenance area. Once inside, he closed the door and lowered the blinds. "You've been a good officer, Collins. Smart, dedicated. But you don't know when to let things go." Max alerted to that motorcycle. "He's never been wrong." Hayes sighed, suddenly looking tired. "There are bigger things happening here than you understand. That motorcycle and its owner are not your concern." "So you know Rodriguez is connected to the Santiago cartel?" Sarah challenged. Hayes didn't flinch. "What I know is that certain operations require looking the other way. Law enforcement is complicated, Collins. Sometimes the greater good means letting some things slide." Sarah felt her world tilt. 5 years of trusting this man, of believing in his integrity, collapsed in seconds. "You're on their payroll." It wasn't a question. Hayes laughed mirthlessly. "Payroll? You think it's about money? God, you're still so naive." He stepped closer. "Do you have any idea how many officers the cartel has killed? How many families threatened? Sometimes survival means compromise." Sarah thought of Mike bleeding out in that warehouse. Had Hayes' compromise played a role in that too? "I'm confiscating your badge and weapon while you're investigated for insubordination," Hayes said flatly. "Max will be reassigned to Officer Peterson until further notice." The thought of Max being taken from her sent panic through Sarah's chest. "You can't." "I can and I will. Unless you're willing to be smart about this. Delete whatever photos you took, forget what you saw, and we all go back to normal." Sarah felt her phone buzz in her pocket. A text message. She maintained eye contact with Hayes while subtly checking the screen. The message from Jack made her blood run cold. "Get out now. Thompson knows." A commotion outside drew Hayes' attention. Sarah used the moment to slip past him, calling Max to her side. Hayes grabbed for her arm but missed. "Collins, don't throw away your career over this." Sarah paused at the door. "Is that what happened to you? You threw away your integrity to save your career?" She didn't wait for an answer. Sarah and Max moved quickly through the maintenance area toward a service exit. As they rounded a corner, Sarah nearly collided with a man checking a black Ducati motorcycle. "Oh, in a hurry there, officer." The man straightened and Sarah felt the floor drop from beneath her. The face was older, harder than she remembered. The last time she'd seen Jason Collins, her brother had been heading to prison for armed robbery, swearing he'd never speak to her again after she'd testified against him. That was 6 years ago. "Jason?" she whispered, disbelief coursing through her. His eyes widened in recognition, then darted to Max and back to her face. "Sarah. Shit." He glanced nervously over his shoulder. "You shouldn't be here." "What are you doing here? When did you get out?" 3 months ago. Good behavior." His voice dropped. "Look, you need to leave. Now. These aren't people you want to mess with." Sarah's training kicked in, the personal shock giving way to professional assessment. "You're involved with Rodriguez." Jason's face tightened. "It's not what you think. They've got leverage on me." "What kind of leverage?" Jason hesitated, conflict clear in eyes so similar to her own. "They know about Emma, about her school, her routine, about Mom's house where she's staying this weekend." Ice flooded Sarah's veins. "You told them about my daughter?" "I didn't have a choice. They showed up the day I got out, showed me pictures of you, of Emma. Said they knew I was your brother, that they'd been watching you since Santiago." They said if I didn't help them, they'd make what happened to you during Santiago look like a day at the beach. Only they'd make you watch while they did it to Emma. Sarah fought the urge to vomit. What are they planning, Jason? Big shipment hidden in motorcycles coming through the rally. But that's not, he stopped as a door opened nearby. Sarah, they made me call Thompson when I saw you. He's coming with security. You need to run. Come with me. We can protect you. Sarah reached for her brother's arm. Jason pulled away. You can't protect anyone from these people. I've seen what they do. Collins. Thompson's voice echoed through the maintenance bay. Security check. Jason pushed Sarah toward the exit. Go, I'll stall them. Sarah hesitated, torn between duty and family. Max, come. The German shepherd followed as she pushed through the service door into the bright afternoon sun. Her phone buzzed again. Jack had sent an address, a safe house 20 minutes away. As Sarah and Max hurried toward her unmarked police SUV, her mind raced. Hayes corrupted. Her brother blackmailed. Emma threatened. The Santiago cartel had just made this deeply personal, and for the first time since becoming a police officer, Sarah wasn't sure if following the law was the right move. What she did know was that Max had been right about the motorcycle. He'd sensed the danger when no one else had. And as they drove away from the rally ground, Sarah made a promise to herself. Anyone who threatened her daughter would regret it, badge or no badge. The safe house was a nondescript bungalow in a quiet suburban neighborhood east of Atlanta. Jack met Sarah at the door, ushering her and Max inside quickly. The curtains were drawn, and the living room had been converted into a makeshift command center. Laptops, communication equipment, and case files spread across a dining table. You look terrible, Jack said, handing her a bottle of water. When's the last time you slept? Sleep's overrated, Sarah replied, accepting the water gratefully. Her hand shook slightly as she drank. The adrenaline crash was hitting her hard. Hayes is dirty, Jack. He all but admitted it. Jack nodded grimly. That tracks with what we've been seeing. Dia's been investigating a leak in Atlanta PD for months. Hayes was on the short list, but they couldn't prove anything. And my brother's somehow involved. The reality of seeing Jason again after 6 years of silence was still sinking in. He says they're threatening Emma. Jack's expression darkened. We've already sent a protection detail to your mother's house. Emma's safe. He paused. Sarah, there's more to this than drug smuggling. The intelligence we're gathering suggests this operation connects to something bigger, possibly human trafficking. Sarah felt Max press against her leg, his warm presence grounding her. She absently stroked his head, trying to process everything. Rodriguez's motorcycle, Max alerted to it specifically. There must be something inside those custom saddlebags. We think it's cash, Jack said, opening a file on his laptop. Large amounts, possibly for a major buy. But that's just the visible part. He turned the screen toward her, showing surveillance photos of Marcus Thompson meeting with several men, including one Sarah recognized immediately. Thomas Wilson? She asked incredulously. The former FBI analyst had been a legend in law enforcement circles. He's involved in this? We're not sure yet. He's been consulting on security for the rally for the past 3 years. Could be coincidence, could be something else. That's why we need hard evidence. Sarah was about to respond when Max suddenly stiffened, his ears perking up. He moved to the center of the room, sniffing intently at a decorative bowl on the coffee table. What is it, boy? Sarah asked, immediately alert. Max pawed at the bowl, knocking it aside to reveal a small black disc underneath a listening device. Jack swore under his breath, grabbing a notepad and writing "House compromised." Sweep for more. For the next 20 minutes, they searched in silence, finding 2 more devices, one in the kitchen light fixture and another in the bedroom. Jack disabled each one, placing them in a metal box. We need to move, he whispered. They know we're onto them. As if on cue, Sarah's phone rang, an unknown number. she answered cautiously, putting it on speaker. Officer Collins. Thomas Wilson's smooth, cultured voice filled the room. I believe we have some matters to discuss regarding your unauthorized investigation. Sarah's mind flashed back to 3 years ago. Wilson had been at the Santiago raid too, consulting with the FBI task force. She remembered his calm demeanor as agents secured the scene, his analytical eyes taking everything in. Had he been playing both sides even then? Wilson. Didn't expect to hear from you. Thought high-priced security consultants were too busy for phone calls. I make time for special cases, Officer Collins. Your persistence has become problematic, much like during the Santiago operation. The mention of Santiago sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Her hand unconsciously moved to her back, where the scars from that day remained a permanent reminder of what happened when operations went wrong. I was just doing my job then, she said evenly. Same as now. And look where that got you last time. Wilson's voice took on an edge. Scars, nightmares, PTSD. A dead partner. All because you couldn't leave well enough alone. Sarah's breath caught. Mike's death had been officially attributed to a cartel shooter, but the investigation had been rushed, details glossed over. Had Wilson been involved somehow? What do you want, Wilson? A simple exchange. You have something I need information about what you've discovered. I have something you need assurance of your daughter's continued safety. Jack was already on another phone, signaling frantically to a colleague to check on the protection detail at Sarah's mother's house. If you touch my daughter. Please, Officer Collins. We're professionals. No one wants violence, but actions have consequences. Your brother understood that eventually. I suggest you take his advice and walk away. The call ended abruptly. Jack looked up from his phone, his expression grim. Protection detail isn't responding. Sarah felt the room spinning. Everything she'd fought for, everyone she loved, all at risk. And for what? Because Max had barked at a motorcycle. As if sensing her thoughts, Max pressed his muzzle against her hand. Sarah looked down into those soulful brown eyes that had never lied to her, never betrayed her trust. We need to get to my mother's house, she said, standing up. Now. The drive to her mother's suburban home was tense, each minute stretching painfully. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Jack rode shotgun, coordinating with FBI teams, while Max sat alertly in the back, sensing the tension. When they arrived, the house appeared normal from outside, lights on in the living room, her mother's car in the driveway. But the unmarked police car that should have contained 2 officers was empty. Sarah drew her backup weapon, the one Hayes hadn't confiscated, and approached cautiously. Jack flanked her, his own weapon ready. They entered through the back door, finding the kitchen empty but hearing voices from the living room. What Sarah saw when she entered froze her blood. Her mother sat on the couch, calm but pale, with Emma beside her. Across from them, looking entirely at ease, sat Jason, her brother, and beside him, Lieutenant Hayes. About time you got here, Hayes said, looking up. We've been waiting. Sarah raised her weapon. Get away from my family, Hayes. Mom, what's happening? Emma's voice was small, confused. When she saw Max, her face lit up. Max. The German shepherd stayed at Sarah's side, but his tail wagged slightly at Emma's voice. Hayes raised his hand slowly. You've got this all wrong, Collins. I'm not here to hurt them. Then explain why my protection detail isn't responding, Sarah demanded. Because I sent them away, her mother said calmly. When James and Jason arrived and explained what was happening. Sarah stared in confusion. Mom, these men are involved with the cartel. Jason stood slowly. No, Sarah, we're working against them. What? Hayes sighed deeply. I'm deep undercover, Collins. They have been for 18 months. Wilson and Thompson think I'm in their pocket, but I've been feeding information to a joint DA-FBI task force." He glanced at Jack. "Wilson wasn't supposed to know that until someone at your agency leaked my identity." Jack paled slightly. "That's impossible. Only 3 people knew." "And one of them reports to Wilson," Hayes said grimly. "That's why I had to get to your family before they did. Jason's been my confidential informant since he got paroled." Sarah lowered her weapon slightly, mind reeling. "You're working together, but you threatened to take Max away." "I was trying to get you out of harm's way," Hayes said. "You stumbled into an operation we've been building for years. When Max alerted on that motorcycle, it nearly blew everything." "But Max was right," Sarah insisted. "Rodriguez is smuggling something." "Yes," Jason confirmed, "but it's not just drugs. Those motorcycles have hidden compartments designed for human trafficking. The main event tomorrow isn't just a showcase, it's a delivery." Sarah felt sick. "How deep does this go?" Hayes and Jason exchanged glances. "All the way to Thomas Wilson," Hayes said finally. "Former FBI analyst turned cartel facilitator. He's been using his knowledge of our systems to help them evade detection for years." "And you have proof?" "Not enough," Jason admitted. "Not yet." Sarah looked at her daughter, her mother, her brother, her supervisor, and finally at Max, who had started it all with a bark at a motorcycle. They were all connected now, all in danger. "Then let's get some," she said decisively. "Max found their secret once. He can do it again." Dawn broke over the Atlanta Exhibition Center as final preparations for the Freedom Riders Rally's main event got underway. The showcase arena had been transformed overnight, a central stage surrounded by tiered displays featuring the finest motorcycles in the country. Thousands of spectators would soon fill the stands, unaware of the drama about to unfold. Sarah adjusted her uniform, now wearing the standard security outfit provided to all staff working the event. The tactical vest beneath felt heavier than usual, or perhaps it was the weight of what was at stake. Hayes had arranged for her to be officially reinstated for the operation, though as far as Wilson and Thompson knew, she was still suspended and present only as a private citizen. "Communications check," Jack's voice came through her concealed earpiece. He was coordinating from a mobile command center parked 3 blocks away, where Emma and Sarah's mother were safely ensconced with federal protection. "Collins, check," Sarah responded quietly. Max sat at her feet, wearing what appeared to be a standard K9 unit vest, but had been modified to include a small camera and additional tactical features. "Hayes, check," came her supervisor's voice from somewhere on the opposite side of the arena. "Jason, check," her brother added. He would be posing as one of the motorcycle detailers, giving him access to the competition area. The plan was deceptively simple: gather irrefutable evidence of Wilson and Thompson's involvement in human trafficking, identify the motorcycles being used for transport, and locate any victims before they could be moved. Max's extraordinary scent detection abilities were central to the operation. His alert on Rodriguez's motorcycle had been the first thread that unraveled the entire conspiracy. "Thompson has entered the building," Hayes reported. "He's with Rodriguez and 3 security personnel. Wilson is expected within the hour." Sarah patted Max's head reassuringly. "Ready, partner?" The German shepherd's alert eyes seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. The arena began filling with spectators around 9 o'clock. Sarah maintained her position near the southwest entrance, observing as motorcycle enthusiasts, families, and VIPs filed past. Her trained eye noted several cartel-affiliated individuals among the crowd's, men whose faces she recognized from briefing files, moving with the practiced casualness of predators. "Wilson has arrived," Jason's voice crackled over the comm. "He's meeting with Thompson in the VIP lounge. Rodriguez just got a text and is heading toward the maintenance area with 2 mechanics." "Stay on Rodriguez," Hayes instructed. "Collins, bring Max to the North Service corridor. We need to check the delivery motorcycles before they're moved to the display area." Sarah acknowledged and began making her way through the crowd, Max keeping perfect heel position beside her. They slipped through a service door into the relative quiet of the maintenance corridors. The north service area contained 12 motorcycles queued for introduction at the showcase, gleaming machines representing the pinnacle of custom design. Each was worth well over 6 figures, their elaborate modifications providing perfect cover for hidden compartments. Start with the red Ducati, Hayes instructed through her earpiece. Intelligence suggests it's one of theirs. Sarah gave Max the search command, watching as the German Shepherd methodically worked his way around the motorcycle. At the modified exhaust system, Max sat abruptly a positive alert. "We've got something on the Ducati," Sarah reported quietly, examining the motorcycle without touching it. The craftsmanship was impeccable, with no visible seams or access points. Whatever compartment existed was expertly concealed. Max moved to the next motorcycle without command, a black custom chopper with electric blue detailing. Again, he alerted, this time at the fuel tank. Sarah noted both motorcycles on her tablet, creating a record for the evidence chain. By the time Max had checked all 12 motorcycles, he had alerted on 7 of them. The pattern was clear. These were not random selections, but a coordinated shipment. Collins. The voice behind her sent ice through her veins. Sarah turned slowly to find Thomas Wilson standing in the doorway, his expensive suit immaculate, his smile coldly professional. 2 security men flanked him. "Mr. Wilson," Sarah acknowledged, instinctively positioning herself between the men and Max. "Enjoying the rally?" "Immensely," Wilson replied, stepping into the room. "Though I find myself curious why a suspended officer and her K9 are examining these particular motorcycles. Especially after our conversation about respecting boundaries." Sarah maintained her composure, though her heart hammered in her chest. Wilson had been FBI for 20 years before entering private security. He knew every interrogation technique, every pressure point. And he'd been nearby during Santiago. The thought made her scars burn. "Max needed some air," she said casually. "The crowds get to him sometimes." Wilson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your dog seems remarkably interested in these specific motorcycles. Perhaps he's developing mechanical aptitude along with his other talents." One of Wilson's security men moved toward the door, presumably to block her exit. Through her earpiece, Sarah could hear Hayes issuing urgent instructions, but Wilson was close enough that she couldn't respond without giving away the operation. "Dogs have keen senses," Sarah replied. "Maybe he smells something you don't want found." Wilson's expression hardened. "I've always admired your directness, Officer Collins. Such a rare quality." He gestured to his men. "Please escort Officer Collins and her dog to my office. We have matters to discuss privately." The security men moved forward, but Max stepped in front of Sarah, a low growl emanating from his throat. The men hesitated, clearly unnerved by the German Shepherd's protective stance. "Max won't react well to threats," Sarah warned. "He's trained to protect." Wilson sighed. "Always making things difficult." He reached inside his jacket, and Sarah tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, he withdrew a phone. "Perhaps this will simplify our negotiation." "It does." He turned the screen toward her. Sarah felt her blood freeze. The image showed Jason being held at gunpoint by Thompson. "Your brother has been playing a dangerous game," Wilson said conversationally, "pretending to work for us while feeding information to Hayes. Did you know he was undercover, or did you really think your own brother had turned against you?" Sarah fought to keep her expression neutral, but her mind raced. How much did Wilson know? Was the entire operation compromised? "What do you want?" she asked, buying time as she assessed escape routes. "The same thing I've always wanted: efficiency and profit without interference." Wilson stepped closer. "The motorcycles are leaving during the main event. You and your dog will not prevent that. The merchandise they contain is worth millions, both the drugs and the people." Sarah felt sick. You're trafficking human beings. I prefer to think of it as specialized transport for individuals whose services are in high demand. Wilson's casual tone made the words even more chilling. Young people with very particular skills moving to where those skills are most valued. Sarah thought of the alert Max had given on the motorcycles, not his standard drug alert, but something different, more urgent. He hadn't just detected contraband, he'd sensed people. "And Hayes?" she asked, stalling further. "Lieutenant Hayes has been most helpful, though he doesn't realize how thoroughly I've monitored his little undercover operation." Wilson checked his watch. "In approximately 3 minutes, he'll be meeting an unfortunate end during a confrontation with armed suspects. Such a tragedy for the department." Sarah had to act now. She gave Max the silent attack command, 2 fingers tapped against her thigh. The German Shepherd launched forward instantly, taking down the nearest security guard with precision. Sarah simultaneously drew her concealed weapon, firing at the second guard's shoulder, a non-lethal shot designed to disable. Wilson moved with surprising speed for a man his age, drawing his own weapon. The sounds of struggle and gunshots would bring others running within seconds. "Hayes," Wilson made us. Sarah shouted into her comm as she dove behind a motorcycle for cover. "Thompson has Jason. They know everything." A bullet pinged off the concrete floor inches from her position. Max had the first guard pinned, but the second was returning fire despite his injury. Wilson had disappeared through a side door. "Hold position." Hayes' voice commanded. "Backup is 2 minutes out." Another shot narrowly missed Sarah's head. Max looked to her for direction, unwavering in his loyalty despite the chaos. The arena loudspeakers suddenly blared to life, announcing the start of the main showcase. Thousands of spectators cheered, unaware of the life-and-death struggle unfolding behind the scenes. Sarah knew she couldn't wait for backup. Every second delayed meant Wilson getting further away, the motorcycles possibly leaving, and Jason remaining in danger. "Max, find," she commanded, pointing toward the door Wilson had escaped through. The German Shepherd immediately understood, leading the way as Sarah followed, weapon ready. They were heading straight into the heart of the conspiracy, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling they were running out of time. Max raced ahead through the service corridor, following Wilson's scent with single-minded determination. Sarah maintained pace several steps behind, her weapon at the ready, clearing each corner with practiced precision. The distant roar of the crowd provided an unsettling soundtrack to their pursuit. Over her earpiece, she could hear the tactical teams chatter as they converged on the exhibition center, but help was still minutes away. The corridor opened into a larger staging area where motorcycles were being prepared for the showcase. Sarah spotted Wilson across the room, speaking urgently into a phone while Thompson stood nearby, his hand firmly gripping Jason's arm, a pistol pressed against her brother's ribs. 3 armed security personnel formed a protective perimeter around them. Sarah ducked behind a stack of equipment crates, signaling Max to stay low. She assessed the situation with the cold clarity that came with adrenaline. 5 armed opponents, her brother as a hostage, and at least 60 feet of open space between her position and theirs. The odds were decidedly unfavorable. "Jack," she whispered into her comm, "I have visual on Wilson, Thompson, and Jason. Northeast staging area. 5 armed subjects. Jason is being held at gunpoint." "Copy that," Jack replied. "Tactical team is 2 minutes out. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." Sarah watched as Wilson finished his call and nodded to Thompson. They began moving toward a service exit where a black SUV was visible through the open door. They were escaping with Jason. "They're moving Jason," Sarah reported. "I don't have 2 minutes." Before Jack could respond, Max suddenly tensed beside her, a low growl building in his throat. Sarah followed his gaze and felt her heart stop. Through a partially open door on the opposite side of the staging area, she glimpsed what appeared to be a storage room. Inside, huddled on the floor, were several young women, teenagers by the look of them, their expressions vacant with fear. One of Wilson's men stood guard at the door. The human cargo, the merchandise Wilson had spoken of so casually. Sarah's decision was made in an instant. Jack, there are trafficking victims on site. Northeast staging area, east storage room. I'm engaging. She gave Max the silent command to stay, then fired 2 quick shots into the air. The resulting chaos was immediate. Wilson's security team turned toward the sound, momentarily distracted from Jason and the victims. Police. Drop your weapons, Sarah shouted, using the distraction to move to a new position. Gunfire erupted as Wilson's men returned fire, bullets pinging off metal and concrete around her. Sarah caught a glimpse of Jason taking advantage of the confusion, driving his elbow into Thompson's solar plexus and wrestling for control of the pistol. "Sarah, stay back," Jason shouted as he grappled with Thompson. Wilson was already at the exit, shouting orders to his men. 2 of them moved toward the storage room, clearly intent on securing their human cargo before police arrived. Sarah couldn't let that happen. She broke cover, firing at the men approaching the storage room. Her first shot struck one in the leg, dropping him to the ground. The second man turned, returning fire with an automatic weapon. Sarah felt the rush of air as bullets passed inches from her head. Max, interpreting the danger to his partner, broke his stay command. The German Shepherd launched across the open space with startling speed, a blur of fur and focused power. He hit the gunman mid-torso, the impact sending both dog and man crashing to the floor. The sound of Max's pained yelp cut through the chaos like a knife. "Max!" Sarah's scream tore from her throat as she saw her partner, her friend, collapse to the side. A spreading crimson stain appeared on his tactical vest. Time seemed to slow. Sarah was moving, running toward Max with no thought for her own safety. More gunshots echoed through the staging area. From the corner of her eye, she saw Jason and Thompson still struggling, saw Wilson climbing into the SUV, saw the tactical team finally breaching the far entrance. None of it mattered. Only Max mattered. She reached him, sliding to her knees on the concrete. The German Shepherd's breathing was labored, his normally alert eyes clouded with pain. The bullet had penetrated his vest at an angle, finding the gap in the protective material. "Stay with me, boy," Sarah whispered, pressing her hand against the wound to stem the bleeding. "Stay with me." Max whined softly, trying to lift his head. Even now, even wounded, he was looking past her, alerting to danger. Sarah turned just in time to see Hayes charging across the staging area, weapon drawn, heading straight for Thompson and Jason. The lieutenant's face was a mask of determination as he fired 3 rapid shots. Thompson staggered backward, the pistol falling from his grip. Jason collapsed to one knee, his hand pressed to his side. "Hayes," Wilson shouted from the SUV doorway. He raised his own weapon, aiming deliberately at Hayes's back. Sarah couldn't reach her weapon in time, couldn't shout a warning. She could only watch as Wilson fired twice. Hayes jerked with the impact of the bullets, then crumpled to the ground. The tactical team swarmed the area, multiple officers converging on Wilson's position. The SUV's tires squealed as the driver attempted to flee, but a precision shot from one of the tactical officers took out the front tire. Within seconds, Wilson was dragged from the vehicle and secured. Sarah barely registered the arrest. Her focus remained entirely on Max, whose breathing had become increasingly labored. "I need a medic," she shouted, her voice breaking. "Officer down. K9 officer down." Jason staggered to her side, blood seeping between the fingers pressed to his ribs. "Sarah," he gasped, dropping to his knees beside her. "How bad?" "He's dying," Sarah said, the words barely audible. "Jason, he's dying." Her brother stripped off his jacket, pressing it against Max's wound. "No, he's not. Not on my watch." He looked up, spotting a tactical medic entering the staging area. "Here, we need help here." The medic hurried over, assessing Max quickly. "GSW to the left thoracic cavity. We need to move him now." "There's a veterinary trauma unit on standby for K9 officers." As they carefully lifted Max onto a stretcher, Sarah noticed Hayes lying motionless where he had fallen. Two medics worked over him, their expressions grim. She caught fragments of their assessment: multiple GSWS, no pulse, significant blood loss. Hayes had sacrificed himself to save Jason, to stop Thompson. The man she'd suspected of corruption had given his life for the operation. "Lieutenant Hayes?" she asked the nearest tactical officer as they prepared to transport Max. The officer shook his head slightly. "It doesn't look good." Jason's arm encircled her shoulders, providing support she desperately needed. "He knew the risks, Sarah. We all did." "But Max didn't," she whispered, watching as her partner was loaded into an emergency vehicle. "He just did what I trained him to do. What I asked him to do." As they followed the medics out of the building, Sarah caught a glimpse of the storage room where the trafficking victims were being tended to by female officers. Young faces, some showing the first signs of relief after what must have been unimaginable horror. Max had saved them. Hayes had saved Jason, and the cost was almost unbearable. The sunshine outside seemed obscenely bright compared to the darkness that had unfolded within. Sarah climbed into the vehicle beside Max's stretcher, taking his paw in her hand. "Stay with me," she whispered again. "Please stay with me." The veterinary trauma center bustled with controlled urgency as Sarah sat in the sterile waiting room, her uniform still stained with Max's blood. 6 hours had passed since the German Shepherd had been rushed into emergency surgery. Jason occupied the chair beside her, his own wound bandaged after treatment, a graze that had looked worse than it was. Jack paced nearby, coordinating the ongoing operation via phone while providing Sarah with updates when possible. "Wilson's in custody," Jack reported, ending his latest call. "They're holding him at the Federal Detention Center. No bail hearing scheduled yet." Sarah nodded absently, her focus remaining on the surgery doors. "Any word on Hayes?" "Still in critical condition. The doctors say the next 24 hours are crucial." Jack hesitated. "Sarah, there's something you need to know about Hayes. The operation wasn't exactly what you thought." Before Jack could elaborate, the surgery doors swung open. A tired-looking veterinarian in scrubs approached, removing her surgical mask. Sarah stood immediately, her heart in her throat. "Officer Collins?" The vet's expression was professionally neutral. "Max made it through surgery. The bullet missed his heart by centimeters but caused significant damage to his left lung. We've removed the bullet and repaired what we could. The next 12 hours will tell us more, but he's stable for now." The relief that flooded through Sarah was so intense she had to grip the chair to remain standing. "Can I see him?" "Briefly. He's heavily sedated and will be for some time." Sarah followed the veterinarian through the double doors into the recovery area. Max lay on a padded table, connected to various monitoring equipment, his breathing shallow but steady. His normally alert form looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way that broke Sarah's heart. "Hey, partner," she whispered, gently touching his head. Max's ear twitched slightly at her voice, but he remained unconscious. "We'll take good care of him," the vet assured her. "He's a fighter." When Sarah returned to the waiting room, she found a new arrival, Deputy Director Morrison of the FBI, Jack's superior. His presence at a veterinary clinic suggested this was no courtesy visit. "Officer Collins," Morrison greeted her formally. "First, let me say how sorry I am about your partner. From what I hear, his actions today saved numerous lives." "Thank you, sir," Sarah replied warily. "But I doubt you came here just to tell me that." Morrison gestured toward a private consultation room. "We need to talk. There are aspects of this operation you're not aware of." Inside the room, Morrison waited until they were all seated before speaking. "What I'm about to tell you is classified. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't be briefed, but given your involvement and the sacrifices made today, you deserve to know." He removed a file from his briefcase, placing it on the table. The label read Operation Phantom Rider. "Lieutenant Hayes wasn't just running a local undercover operation," Morrison explained. He was part of a joint task force that's been working to dismantle the Santiago cartel's human trafficking network for the past 3 years. Sarah frowned. I knew about the undercover work, but the cartel connection was only part of it, Morrison continued. The primary target was Thomas Wilson. For the past 5 years, we've suspected Wilson of using his FBI knowledge to help criminal organizations evade detection. But we could never prove it. Jack picked up the thread. Hayes approached us 18 months ago with evidence that Wilson was coordinating a trafficking network that moved young people through motorcycle rallies and similar events. The motorcycles were just one part of the operation. Sarah tried to process this information. So Hayes really was one of the good guys all along. Hayes is one of the best undercover operators I've ever worked with, Morrison confirmed. His corrupt cop persona was so convincing that even most of the FBI task force believed it. Only 3 people knew his true role. But Wilson said he knew about Hayes being undercover. Sarah objected. He said he'd been monitoring the operation. Morrison and Jack exchanged glances. That's where things get complicated, Morrison said. Wilson didn't know about Hayes until recently. We believe there's a leak within the FBI, someone who betrayed Hayes. Jack looked stricken. We thought it was contained. That's why we kept you at arm's length, Sarah. We were trying to protect you and the operation. Sarah's mind raced, connecting dots that had eluded her. That's why Hayes tried to get me off the case. He wasn't protecting Wilson, he was protecting me. And Emma, Jason added quietly. Wilson's threat against her was real. Hayes diverted resources to protect her the moment he learned Wilson had made the connection between us. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young FBI agent entered, handing Morrison a tablet. Sir, you need to see this. Wilson's making a deal. Morrison reviewed the information, his expression darkening. Bring up the interview feed. The tablet displayed a sterile interrogation room where Thomas Wilson sat across from 2 federal agents. Unlike the confident, controlled man from earlier, Wilson now appeared haggard, defeated. Yet there was something calculating in his eyes that made Sarah uneasy. I'll give you names, Wilson was saying. Everyone involved, from local cops to federal agents. I'll give you the entire trafficking network, every route, every safe house, every client. But I want full immunity. He's desperate, Jack observed. He knows we have him dead to rights on multiple felonies. Wait, Sarah said, studying Wilson's demeanor. Something's not right. He's too calm for someone facing life in prison. And why offer the entire network? That's his insurance policy. Morrison nodded grimly. You're right to be suspicious. Wilson doesn't surrender, he adapts. This is a play. On the screen, Wilson leaned forward. You think Thompson was my second in command? He was a middle manager at best. My real partner is still out there, still has access to everything. You need me to get to him. The interrogator remained impassive. And who might that be? Wilson smiled thinly. Marcus Thompson wasn't the rally coordinator by accident. His brother is Deputy Director Robert Thompson of Homeland Security. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Robert Thompson, one of the most powerful men in law enforcement, with access to every database, every surveillance system in the country. Is that true? She asked Morrison. We've been investigating Robert Thompson for months, Morrison admitted. But we've never had enough evidence to move against someone at his level. If Wilson is telling the truth. He's throwing Thompson to the wolves to save himself, Jason concluded. Sarah thought of the young women they'd rescued. How many others might still be trapped in the trafficking network? Can you make the deal? If Thompson is really involved, we have no choice, Morrison said. But Wilson will walk away from crimes that deserve multiple life sentences. The injustice of it burned in Sarah's chest. Then a realization hit her. Wait, the motorcycles. Max alerted on 7 of them specifically. Did you recover all 7? Jack checked his tablet. 6 were secured at the scene. The seventh was removed before the tactical team arrived. "That motorcycle will have evidence," Sarah said with certainty. "Max never alerts without reason. If we find it, we might not need Wilson's deal." Morrison considered this. "We can track the motorcycle through traffic cameras, border checkpoints." "No," Sarah said. "A plan forming. Wilson's network is sophisticated enough to avoid standard surveillance. But they can't hide from Max, not if the motorcycle passed through the staging area." "Your dog can track a specific motorcycle through an entire city?" Morrison asked skeptically. "Max isn't just any dog," Sarah said, her confidence absolute. "He tracked a kidnapper through 3 miles of storm drains last year. If that motorcycle was in the same room as him, he can find it as long as he recovers." The veterinarian's words echoed in her mind. He's a fighter. Sarah needed Max to fight now, not just for his own life, but for justice itself. Without him, Wilson might escape the punishment he deserved. As if summoned by her thoughts, the door opened again. The veterinarian entered, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Max is awake," she announced, "and he's already trying to get up. I think he's looking for you." 3 weeks after the raid at the Freedom Riders rally, Sarah sat beside Max's hospital bed at the Veterinary Rehabilitation Center. The German Shepherd's recovery had been slow but steady, the damaged lung healing gradually, his strength returning day by day. She stroked his fur gently, careful to avoid the still tender area where the bullet had entered. "The doctor says you might come home next week," she told him softly. "Emma's already preparing your favorite spot by the window." Max's tail thumped weakly against the bed in response, his eyes bright and alert despite his reduced physical condition. A light knock on the door interrupted their moment. Lieutenant James Hayes entered, moving carefully with the assistance of a cane. His own recovery had been even more precarious. The 2 bullets he'd taken had caused significant internal damage, and for 48 hours his survival had been uncertain. "How's our hero doing today?" Hayes asked, easing himself into the chair opposite Sarah. "Better than yesterday, not as good as tomorrow," Sarah replied with the phrase that had become their recovery mantra. "The rehab specialist thinks he might be able to return to limited duty in 3 months." Hayes nodded approvingly, just in time for the new K-9 training program. The program had been Hayes' idea, a specialized unit focused on detecting and responding to human trafficking situations. Max would be the model for training other dogs to recognize the specific scents and scenarios associated with trafficking operations. "Any updates on the case?" Sarah asked, though she knew Hayes would tell her only what she was cleared to hear. "Wilson's deal fell apart," Hayes said with satisfaction. "After you and Max tracked down that 7th motorcycle to the warehouse in Marietta, the evidence was overwhelming. The FBI found DNA from 12 different trafficking victims inside the hidden compartments, plus documentation linking directly to Robert Thompson." The memory of that search still filled Sarah with pride. Despite his weakened condition, Max had performed flawlessly, picking up the scent trail from a vest he'd worn during the original alert and following it across miles of urban landscape to an abandoned warehouse where cartel members had been preparing to transport the modified motorcycle across state lines. "And Thompson?" Sarah prompted. "In federal custody, along with 16 other government officials implicated in the network. Wilson's looking at multiple life sentences." Hayes' expression darkened slightly. "Though the damage he did can never be undone." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, both reflecting on the cost of bringing down the trafficking ring, the physical wounds they carried, and the less visible scars left by betrayal and violence. "I heard Jason's probation officer approved his move," Hayes said, changing the subject to something more hopeful. Sarah smiled. "He's renting the apartment above my garage. Close enough to help with Emma and Max, but still has his independence. The construction company hired him full-time after his probation officer vouched for him." Jason's redemption had been one of the few bright spots in the aftermath. His actions during the raid had earned him considerable goodwill with the prosecutors, who had agreed not to pursue charges for his initial involvement with Rodriguez. More importantly, he had reconnected with Emma, the niece he'd never really known, forming a bond that had already helped her social development. "You Collins siblings are hard to keep down," Hayes observed with a hint of his old dry humor. Before Sarah could respond, the door opened again and Emma burst in, followed more sedately by Sarah's mother. "Max." Emma ran straight to the German Shepherd, who perked up visibly at her arrival. Unlike her usual hesitation around others, Emma showed no restraint with Max, carefully hugging him while avoiding his bandaged side. "She's been counting the minutes until visiting hour," Sarah's mother explained, setting down a vase of fresh flowers. "Wouldn't even stop for ice cream." "Ice cream after," Emma declared firmly, her attention focused entirely on Max, who was licking her hand affectionately. Hayes rose with some difficulty. "I should let you have your family time." "Collins, remember what we discussed, no rush on the paperwork. Your position will be there when you and Max are ready." After Hayes departed, Sarah watched her daughter with Max, marveling at how naturally they communicated despite Emma's challenges with human interaction. The German Shepherd seemed to understand instinctively how to respond to her needs, when to be still, when to offer affection. "Mom says Max is coming home soon," Emma said, looking up at Sarah with unusual directness. "Is he still going to be a police dog?" Sarah considered how to explain the complexities of Max's future. "He'll always be a police dog at heart, but his job might be different now. Sometimes when brave people get hurt, they have to find new ways to help." Emma processed this with the literal mindedness characteristic of her condition. "Like when I couldn't go to regular school, so we found a new school that works better for my brain." "Exactly like that," Sarah agreed, touched by her daughter's insight. A month later, on a crisp autumn morning, Sarah stood with Max in the central courtyard of the Atlanta Police Headquarters. The German Shepherd sat at perfect attention beside her, the only sign of his injury a slight stiffness when he moved too quickly. His coat gleamed in the sunlight, the ceremonial collar around his neck bearing the medal for valor he was about to receive. The audience included uniformed officers, government officials, and the families of those involved in bringing down Wilson's network. Emma and Jason sat in the front row alongside the 7 young women who had been rescued during the raid, now in various stages of recovery and reunion with their families. "Today we honor extraordinary heroism in the face of danger," the police commissioner announced. Officer Sarah Collins and K-9 Officer Max demonstrated the highest traditions of law enforcement, putting their lives at risk to rescue victims of trafficking and bring dangerous criminals to justice. As the medal was affixed to Max's collar, Sarah felt a complex wave of emotions: pride in her partner, gratitude for his survival, and a profound sense that their journey together was entering a new phase rather than ending. After the ceremony, Hayes approached with a young woman beside him. "Collins, this is Maria Sanchez from the Victim Advocacy Program. She has a special request for you and Max." Maria smiled nervously. "Officer Collins, the survivors from the raid have been receiving therapy to help process their trauma. Several have expressed interest in working with therapy dogs as part of their recovery. When we learned about Max's new training role, we wondered if he might help with their therapy sessions," Sarah finished, understanding immediately. "Only if his recovery permits," Maria added quickly. "We understand he's still healing." Sarah looked down at Max, who returned her gaze with the steady, soulful eyes that had never failed to see truth when others missed it. From his first alert at Rodriguez's motorcycle to his tracking of the 7th bike, despite his injuries, Max had demonstrated an unbreakable commitment to finding those who needed help. "I think Max would consider it an honor," Sarah said, feeling certain she was speaking for them both. Later that evening, as sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and amber, Sarah sat on her back porch with Max resting beside her. Emma and Jason were inside preparing dinner, their laughter occasionally drifting through the open windows. The German Shepherd sighed contentedly, his head resting on Sarah's lap. You know, she told him quietly, when you first barked at that motorcycle, I thought you were just having an off day. She stroked his ears gently. Turns out you were just getting started. Max's tail thumped against the porch boards once, twice, 3 times a rhythm that sounded remarkably like agreement. In a world that often dismisses wisdom that can't be measured or explained, Dog Won't Stop Barking at Biker's Motor reminds us of a truth we've learned through decades of living. Sometimes our deepest instincts are our most reliable guides. Like Sarah trusting Max when everyone else saw only a disobedient dog, we too face moments when experience tells us something is wrong, despite what others say. As we age, society increasingly encourages us to doubt ourselves, to defer to younger voices or newer technologies. Yet this story celebrates the courage to stand firm when instinct speaks. It honors the unbreakable bonds we forge through loyalty and mutual respect, whether with family, colleagues, or beloved companions. Most powerfully, it affirms that our value doesn't diminish with injury or age. When Max transitions from active patrol to training and therapy work, he continues to serve with the same heart, only in new ways. This mirrors our own journeys as we adapt our contributions to changing circumstances while maintaining our essential purpose. Trust your instincts. Honor your experience. And remember that the wisdom you've earned over a lifetime remains your most precious gift to offer the world. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.